Hello everybody. Today, as some of you asked me multiple times, I will be talking about my competitive programming setup. I will be talking about hardware, about my Google Chrome extensions for Codeforces, about my Vim setup, about my C++ setup, and so on. If you're interested in something specific, you may want to check the chapters on the timeline of this video, or you can click on the timestamps in the description. Also, if you have any questions, please first check out the description of this video because I will leave all the links to everything I will be talking about there. But if you still have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them in the comment section. So let's go. So in the first part of this video, I'll talk about my hardware. Let's start with my laptop. My previous computer was really old and I wanted to replace it for a long time. And when I started this channel, I realized that it's really hard to make videos on an old computer. So I finally bought a new one. And now I have my late 2020 MacBook Air with M1 chip, 60 gigs of unified memory, 512 gigs of SSD, and I prefer MacBook Air, not MacBook Pro, because I really don't like this touch bar, and also I prefer 13-inch displays because I don't like huge and heavy computers. So here it is. I'll leave the link in the description. You can check it out. As a microphone for these videos, I use my Blue Yeti. Actually, I have it right here. Here it is. I'm not really into sound production, but it works fine, and I don't know what to say. When I need to draw something during screencasts, I use my one by Wacom tablet. Here it is, and here's the pencil. And it's great, but I have one issue with it. It's one of the more cheap ones, and as you can see, this pencil is plastic. And I've used another one which had a metal pencil. It was a more expensive one, and that pencil was much better. So if you have enough money, I would recommend you to buy a better version of this tablet. Generally, I don't have any external monitors, but right now I'm on my summer internship, so I have one. You can see right here how my setup looks right now. I hope it will help me with my streams, and I will leave a link to it in the description of this video. In the second part of this video, I'll talk about just small things that I use. First of them is a program that I use when I draw with my tablet. It's called Sketchbook by Autodesk. I've used a couple of these and I think that this is the best for me. And as you could see in my screencasts, I draw here a lot and it really helps me. Now let's move on to things that I use specifically for competitive programming. And we will start with two Google Chrome extensions that I use for Codeforces. First of them is called CF Predictor, and it just adds this nice column to the standings where you can see rating gains and losses during the contest. Of course, they are predicted, so they may be not right, but they give you some understanding of what's going on. I should mention that it updates not that fast, so if you solved a problem, it won't update right away. You should wait like 3 minutes and then it will update. So the second one is called Codeforces Enhancer. Let's go to the settings to see what it does. There are 4 options. First one is enable hide solved problems button. If we go to Boogaboo set, you can see that I solved some problems here, but there is this hide solved problems button, and if I click it, these problems that I solved will disappear, and now I can easily solve all the problems on Codeforces. The second button is enable standings colorizing. If we enable it and update a page, we'll see that now there are these different colors for different programming languages, and for each submission of each participant, we can see which language did they use. As you can see, pretty much everyone uses C++, some people use Java or Python. But I don't really use this feature because when we go to the room where we want to hack people, we'll see all these different colors, but I don't want to see it. Let's update the page, because when I'm in the room, I want to see these yellow and red colors, which indicate which submission I've already checked. So the third thing is show number of incorrect attempts in stand-ins. If we go to the stand-ins, we can see this little number here. So for example, this person had 2 incorrect submissions for problem F. And the last one is enable multiple rating graphs display. So if you go here, as you can see, it doesn't work. I think it's because Codeforces updated this graph thing. Initially, I downloaded this extension for this multiple graph thing, but it doesn't work anymore. So basically, I use it now only for this little number over here. I will leave links to the extensions in the description, so you can download it, check them, and I believe you will like them. In the third part of this video, let's talk about my Vim setup. Especially, I use Macvim because I think it's more user-friendly and it's cool to have a separate program that you enter and you can write your code. I should make a disclaimer that I personally use Vim and I don't like any IDEs. Actually, I write all my code in Vim and basically I manage all my text files in Vim, but some people like IDEs, some people like different things. You don't need to just see that I use Vim and then run and install Vim, try to learn it and stuff. Maybe it's just not for you. A lot of people like IDEs. IDEs are great. They are just not for me. So I recommend you to watch this, see what I'm doing with my Vim. If you're interested, you may want to try it. Then when you try different variants, you may choose the one that works for you, but don't run and use Vim right away. So here's my Macvim. Let's go to the most important file, vimrc, where my Vim setup is. I use color scheme named jellybeans. I will leave a link in the description. Then there are different functional buttons. For example, if I press F1, I go to the previous tab. F3 compiles. F7 is for Python. There are some commented that I used before, don't use anymore. Here is the most important is this. When I press F10, I compile and run my CPP file. So it compiles it G++ with sanitizer, C++17. It uses some minus W's for warnings. Also, it defines on PC minus O2 optimization, and also it uses file named INP as my input file. So I don't need to write input of the problem every time. Also, there is F9, which is just the same, but it doesn't use input file. For example, if it's some kind of interactive problem. And there is also F8. And the difference is that it doesn't use these warnings. For example, if I take some code from internet and it's not really great, but I don't want to rewrite it during the contest, it may have a lot of warnings. I don't want to see them anymore, so I use F8. Then there is this thing, if you press % in Vim, it will go from the top of the block to the bottom and from the bottom to the top, but I use tab for this. So let's see. if we have some code and we have this block of this brace and this brace. So now I'm standing here, and if I press tab, it will jump here, and the same from the bottom. So if we want to go to the top of the block from the bottom, it's a good thing. Then I have my plugins. We'll talk about them later. And then there's a lot of different settings. I will leave this vimrc file in the description so you can check it, you can copy it, you can use it. Basically what I did, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago, I took vimrc file from my friend, and then over the years I changed something here. So let's talk about plugins. For plugins, I use this thing named vim-plug. It's a really nice, easy to use thing for Vim plugins. There are a couple of them. This is for latex. We don't need to cover it here. This video is not about latex. We should focus on this. It's called ultisnips, and it's made for snippets. Let's see a demo. So you can see this person writes something and then something appears on the screen. So basically I use it for snippets. I will explain just right now what I mean by that. So let's go to our Vim folder where we have all our plugins. Let's go to ultisnips, and here are a couple of files for each extension. So I have snippets for Python, for latex, and CPP. Now we're interested in CPP. If we open it, there is just a list of snippets. A snippet starts with word snippet, ends with end snippet, and there is a name and a description. So if we go to a CPP file and we type in this name snips and press tab, because tab is my trigger for ultisnips. If I type tab, then it will replace it with the body of the snippet. And this snippet is just used to tell me which snippets I have. There are a lot of them. First of all is my template, C++. If we type beg tab, it will replace it with my setup, and I can immediately start typing inside solve function. Then there's minimal setup, this for loop, which is kind of more tricky. As you can see, there are lots of different things. For example, let's type for tab. Now we have our for loop. It starts with I, but if I don't want to use I as my iterator, I can just type J, and it replaced it in 3 different places. Then we press tab, and it says us that we can replace our N, but for example, we don't want to do that. Then we press tab, and now we are inside the for body, and we can start typing. There are a lot of them. I don't want to go through them right now. Also, I will leave this file in the description. You can check it out. Some of them are outdated. I don't use it anymore. I think I should go through this and replace it with some new things. So there's GCD function, binary power, FFT from tourist, kind of improved, suffix array, achkarasic, convex how trick, segment reef also from tourist, centroid decomposition, sparse table, trip, fanvic, 2D fanvic, modular arithmetics, and so on. And what we're interested in is this. It's kind of one of the most important things. If I type brace and then tab, it will replace it with this, which means, for example, if I make while loop, I print brace tab, and it will make a closing brace, and I will be inside while body. So this is how I use my Vim. I will leave all the links in the description. So I believe that if you want, you can make the same setup as I have, but I recommend you to dive into it more deeply to find maybe something that suits best for you. In the fourth part of this video, I'd like to talk about my C++ setup. As you already seen, if we type beg tab, it will bring my template here. Let's go through it. First line is if def on PC, which means that if on PC is defined, then the code inside this body will be executed. But as you may remember from my vimrc file, I have this -d on PC, which means that we define on PC. So I will have on PC defined on my computer, but it's not defined like on Codeforces or other test systems. So this code will be executed only on my computer. Here we define inside it glibc66 debug, which is kinda does the same thing as warnings. It tells you when you do something completely wrong and it can understand it immediately. Of course, you should put this before you do any includes, because this affects the code inside includes. Also, I use bits stdc++.h to include all the headings I need. Some people don't use it because it just includes some random stuff you don't need, but whatever, I don't care. Other people say that it takes a lot of time to compile, but there is a solution to it. I will leave a link to the description. We can just take this bits stdc++h file and once precompile it, and then it will always be compiled and your compilation time will be just fine. Also, I don't like when you have like 100 or 10 include lines. It seems kind of ugly. So I use my bits stdc++.h. Also, as you may know, there is no bits stdc++h on Mac OS, but you may just make it by yourself. So you can go to the folder where you have your C++ headings, create a folder names bits. You may want to use sudo because it's probably a restricted folder, and then create file named stdc++.h there, take from the internet what this file should be and just copy there. Then you compile it once and then your compilation time will be great. Okay, also if you're using like Visual Studio, I think there's also no stdc++.h file, but I don't know what to do with that. You can Google it. Then I have two defines. I really don't like defines, but I use these ones. First one is if we have like, if we want to use size of an array or something, so we have like vector a, and then we want to take a size. It will return an assigned integer. And if we make a loop that should go from 0 to the size -1, you may know that this is a problem, because if the size is 0, then it's unsigned, it will overflow, it will be bad. So it's a good thing to do, always cast your size to integer, but it's hard, you will forget about it. So I just always use sz instead of size. This is also a kind of ugly define, but what it does, when I use any chars, I want to use unsigned chars instead, because chars have positive numbers, negative numbers. For example, if I want to create an array of size 256, and for each character I want to store the number of occurrences, it may give you some problems, because if you take like array and here's an index For A, it will be okay because it's positive, but for negative characters, it will be a disaster. So I think it's just better to use this. These are definitely not good defines for like real world programming, but it works just fine for me when I do my competitive programming. So the next one is using namespace std. It's just, there is no way you may argue that this is not something you need to write in your competitive programming setup, but there is no need, I don't know how to say it, there is no need to delete this line. So what can go wrong with this? And at the same time, there is a lot of things that can go wrong if you don't write this line. And also you will always need to do like std vector, which is just a lot. Then we have our random numbers. As you may know, you should never use function names rand. If you don't know that, I will leave a link in the description why it is. So we always use our MT1937 for random numbers, and there are two of them. So if I write like ICPC contest, then I want to use constant seed. But if I compete on Codeforces, I don't want my submissions to be hacked. But if you use a constant seed, other people can just take your code, run it, see your random numbers, and they make a test that breaks it. So you should use time as your seed, and also you should use time that updates really fast. So this line just takes current time in nanoseconds, so there is no way someone will hack you. Then we have two type defs I just type LL when I need to use long longs and LD when I need to use long doubles. And then I have my code. Let's go to the main. I use this because sometimes if you don't wanna waste any time, you may just write define int long long. It's a really bad thing to do, but whatever. And it's impossible to have long long main function. So if I have it int 32t, not int, then it won't replace it. Also, it's possible to just delete this in new versions of C++, but I like it the way it is here. Then I have my fast input settings. When I was preparing for this video, I saw that I have this in my template. As you may know, this line is completely useless. So let's just go right now into my snippets and delete this line. I will leave a link in the description why this line is actually useless. Then I have this variable that tells the number of tests I have. I use multi-tests to run all the tests that I have in one run. Initially, I set it as a random big number like a billion. Then if we have this number of tests as a number in our input, then I will uncomment this line. Otherwise, I'll have like pretty much infinite number of tests, and then when they finish, I will just break. So we call our solve function, and if it returns 1, it means that there are no more tests anymore, and then I should just break. Otherwise, we'll loop while we have something there in our input file. Then we have this if-def, which, as you already understood, will only compile on my computer, not on Codeforces, and it's used to separate outputs from different tests inside multitest. And then at the end, we just print the time of execution of this program. So let's, for example, read a number and output it. And let's go to our input file. As you can see, there are 4 numbers, 1, 3, 5, 6. And if we run it, what we will see, 1, 3, 5, 6, separated, so we know where each output is, and at the end we have this line saying us how long it took to compile and no, not to compile, to run this file. So I will leave my setup C++ and all the setups that I talked previously in the description, and you can check it, maybe take something from it to your setup. And at the end, I'd like to just quickly talk about my terminal. I use iterm2 as my terminal, and I use all my ZSH inside it. If you don't know what it is, you can check the description, it will be there. So this was my competitive programming setup. If you found this helpful, please subscribe to the channel and watch my other educational videos. If you still have any questions, don't hesitate to write them in the comments. I will be happy to answer them. Also, if you have any comments, suggestions, also write them down there. So, thank you for watching, have a nice day, goodbye.